I sat there in the dimly lit boardroom, the weight of the moment pressing down on me like a 1,000-pound stone. The paper in front of me was just an NDA. Nothing special except for the fresh ink where my signature now marked the end of my journey with the company I helped create. The room was silent, and for a second, it felt like the world was holding its breath. Across from me sat David Knox, CEO of the company, the man who had once called me his right hand. Now he barely looked up from his laptop as he spoke. "Tom, we've decided to go in a new direction. We're bringing in someone with more experience." I blinked, the words not fully registering at first. My mind screamed, "This can't be real." But I knew better than to show it. I had built this company from the ground up. Years of endless nights, of sacrificing everything for this. And now David was acting like I was just another employee on his payroll, someone to be replaced when the wind shifted. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "I understand," I said, my voice steady, even though inside I was seething. This wasn't just a job to me, this was my life's work. And yet, as I stood to leave, David didn't even look up. He was already typing, probably drafting an email about how smoothly this transition would go. I didn't matter anymore. But what David didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had a secret weapon. A weapon I'd kept hidden for years, meticulously documented. The blueprints, the architecture, the decisions that built this company into what it was. I passed by the office where my team worked, their heads down, unaware that today was my last day. Not one of them looked up as I walked out. They'll figure it out soon enough, I thought. As I got to my car and started the engine, my mind raced. I wasn't angry, not yet, but I could feel something inside me snapping into place. This wasn't the end of my story, far from it. No, this was just the beginning. Because as they celebrated my departure, they had no idea that the company they depended on was about to crumble without me. And I wasn't just going to watch it happen, I was going to make them beg for my help. I pulled out my phone and dialed Jack, my lawyer. "It's done," I said, keeping my voice calm. "I'm sorry, Tom," Jack replied, his voice a steady anchor in the storm that was brewing inside me. "What did they say?" I repeated David's words. Jack was quiet for a moment, processing. "You still have the files, right?" "I have everything," I said, a slight smirk tugging at the corner of my lips. "Good," Jack said. "We'll talk tomorrow, but I think it's time to start making them sweat." And that's exactly what I was going to do. I wasn't just going to disappear into the background like they thought. No, this was my turn to show them who the real architect of this company was. As I sat down at my desk that night with a glass of bourbon in hand, I opened the file labeled Core Systems. Inside was everything I needed to take back what was rightfully mine, everything I had built and everything they couldn't run without. Tomorrow I would begin to take control, and when David came crawling, I would make sure it wasn't just for a second chance. It would be on my terms. This wasn't the end. It was the beginning of a whole new chapter. Narpadavide. The night was quiet, too quiet for someone about to start a war, but I could already feel the tension building. It wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about power, recognition, and the sweet, inevitable revenge of making them realize they needed me more than I ever needed them. I ran my fingers through my hair, feeling the weight of what was about to unfold. I'd been fired, discarded, but deep down, I knew they were wrong to underestimate me. The files I'd opened on my laptop were a map of a company they thought they could run without me. They had no idea what was coming for them. Every decision I had made, every strategy I had executed was carefully documented in those files. It was my blueprint. It wasn't just a bunch of technical jargon or design diagrams. It was my soul in binary. I had poured my heart into every line of code, every infrastructure decision, and every pitch to investors. And now I had the leverage. I didn't need to rush. Time was on my side. For once, I wasn't bound by deadlines or pressure from above. I wasn't the one chasing the next milestone. They were. They had no idea how badly they needed me to stabilize their systems, restore their reputation, and fix the cracks I knew would start showing soon. They had hired someone else to replace me, a so-called expert. But experts can't fix what they don't understand. Experts don't know the intricate workings of a system built from the ground up. Only I knew how to fix it. Only I could save them now, and they didn't even realize it yet. I closed my laptop and leaned back in my chair, staring out the window. The city was bustling outside, a stark contrast to the stillness in my mind. But deep down, I knew that in a few weeks, things would be very different. They would come crawling back, and when they did, I would be ready. The next day, I woke up with a sense of purpose I hadn't felt in a long time. I didn't feel defeated anymore. I wasn't just going to sit back and watch the fallout. No, I was going to take charge. I was going to turn this situation into my advantage. I grabbed my phone and sent Jack a quick text. "We're moving forward. Let's set up a meeting this week." He responded almost immediately, the reassuring message confirming what I already knew. Things were about to get interesting. I spent the day going through the files again, fine-tuning the evidence I'd compiled over the years. It wasn't just about the code anymore. It wasn't just about what I had built. It was about proving that without me, they would be lost. They would be scrambling, their systems breaking down, their clients walking away, and their investors pulling back. They had no idea how much I had shielded them from all these years. Around noon, I received my first message from David. It was brief, to the point, and it made me smile. "Tom, I hope you're doing well. We need to have a conversation soon. There are some issues we're facing that could really use your expertise. Let me know if you're available." I read the message twice, letting the irony sink in. Just a week ago, David had dismissed me as unnecessary. Now here he was, pleading for my help. I could feel the power shift, just a little. It was subtle, but it was there. He needed me. I didn't reply immediately. Instead, I forwarded the message to Jack. "Let him stew for a bit," I wrote. "The longer he waits, the higher my value." Jack agreed. It was time to let David feel the pressure, to understand the reality of what he had done. Over the next few days, the messages started rolling in. One from a senior developer asking for help with a problem I had solved years ago, another from a project manager asking if I could look at some failing integrations, and then a message from a client, the same client I had personally handled during our most critical phase, complaining about delays and broken promises. It was all starting to unravel. The cracks I had warned about were no longer theoretical. They were real, and they were spreading fast. By the end of the week, I had received multiple messages from both internal staff and external clients. It was becoming clear that the company was in freefall without me. The systems I had built weren't just functioning. They were the backbone that held everything together. Without my expertise, their new hires were floundering. The expert they brought in was clueless, and the clients they once trusted were pulling back. It was all too easy to sit back and watch them struggle, but I wasn't interested in just watching. I had a plan. I scheduled a call with Jack that evening. We needed to discuss next steps. When I joined the call, Jack's voice was calm, but I could tell he was just as eager to move forward as I was. "Tom, things are heating up, huh?" he said. I leaned back in my chair, grinning. "They have no idea what's coming. They're so desperate for help, but they still haven't realized that I hold all the cards." Jack laughed. "It's almost too easy, isn't it? They think they can fix it with someone else. They're in for a rude awakening." I nodded. "The funny part is they don't even know what they're missing. They have no idea how much they've depended on me. I built the entire system. I wrote the code that holds it all together. Without me, they're just a house of cards waiting to collapse." "So, what's next?" Jack asked. "I'm going to let them sweat a little longer. Let the issues pile up. Let the pressure mount. But soon, I'll step in. I'll make sure they know that if they want to survive, they need me. But this time, it's going to be on my terms." Jack chuckled. "That's what I like to hear. But remember, don't just go back for the money. Get the recognition too. They need to know that you were the one who made this company. You don't just want to fix their problems. You want them to admit you're the reason they're still in business." I smiled. Jack was right. It wasn't just about the money. It was about acknowledging my worth. It was about showing them how wrong they were to cast me aside. The next day, I received another message from David. This time, he was more direct. "Tom, I think it's time we have a serious conversation. We're struggling, and we could really use your expertise. Let's work something out." I stared at the message for a moment, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I could feel the power shifting in my hands. It was time to strike. I wasn't going to make it easy for him. I wasn't going to rush to their aid. No, I would make them wait. I sent a simple reply. "I'm currently engaged with other projects, but thank you for reaching out." David's reply came almost immediately. "I understand, but this is urgent, Tom. We're losing clients and our systems are crashing. Please, let's talk. We're willing to compensate you well." I didn't respond right away. I leaned back in my chair and let out a slow breath. It was happening, the moment I'd been waiting for. I wasn't just going to go back for a paycheck. I was going to make them beg for my help. But more than that, I was going to make sure they understood who was really responsible for their success and who held the power to either rebuild it or tear it all down. The call came sooner than I expected. 2 days after our last conversation, David's name flashed on my phone. This time, there was no hesitation. I answered immediately, my voice calm but firm. "Tom," David began, sounding like a man who had run out of options. "We've been talking to the board, and we all agree. This isn't just about fixing some bugs anymore. It's about saving the company. We've been losing clients left and right, and the investors are panicking. We can't keep going like this. We need you. We need your vision. I need you to come back. But this time, it's different. I know we've messed up, and I'm willing to make it right. You've got leverage now." I could hear the exhaustion in his voice, the weight of failure bearing down on him, and for a brief moment I almost felt sorry for him. Almost, but I'd learned a long time ago that empathy in business only gets you so far. This wasn't about sympathy, it was about securing my future. "I'm listening," I said, leaning back in my chair, the sound of my voice the only thing steady in the room. "We want to make you the Chief Technology Officer, full creative control over the tech team. We're going to fix the public record and make sure everyone knows what you've done for this company. You'll have full control over how the systems are rebuilt, and we'll bring in a new team to work directly with you. We'll even make sure you get a financial package that reflects what you're worth." There it was, the offer, the one I'd been waiting for, and for a moment I let the silence sit between us. Let him feel the weight of what I was about to decide. "And what else?" I asked, my voice even. David stammered, probably trying to find the right words. I know it's not enough just to fix the systems. I know we need to rebuild trust, rebuild the culture you started, so whatever you need, Tom, whatever you want, we're willing to do it." It was almost too easy. David had no idea how deep he had dug his own hole. He thought throwing money at me, throwing power at me, would be enough. But this wasn't just about money or power. It was about respect. It was about me being recognized for everything I had sacrificed. The long nights, the stress, the endless decisions that no one ever saw, but that kept the company alive. I had to make sure he understood that. "I'll take the CTO position," I said, my voice calm but with an edge that made it clear this wasn't a casual conversation. "But I need one thing from you before I sign anything. I need a formal acknowledgement from the board. I need them to publicly state that without me, this company wouldn't have made it this far, that the systems we're relying on were designed by me, implemented by me, and that the future of this company is built on the foundation I created." David didn't respond immediately, but I could hear the wheels turning. He was weighing how much this would cost him, both financially and in terms of his own pride. I knew it was a blow to his ego to admit that the man he had fired was the reason the company was still standing. "Fine," he said, his voice tight. "We'll do that. I'll talk to the board. I'll make sure we get a statement out. Just, please, Tom, come back." "Good," I replied. "And when you do that, you make sure it's clear. You make sure everyone knows who really built this company. I'm not just coming back to fix your mess. I'm coming back to make sure no one forgets who I am. I'm coming back to lead." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Then David spoke quietly. "I understand. Thank you, Tom." I ended the call, letting the satisfaction wash over me. I wasn't just going back as a fixer. I wasn't just going back to save their company from collapse. I was going back as the architect, the one who had built it from the ground up, and they were going to have to acknowledge it. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. David and the board worked quickly to draft a public statement, one that formally acknowledged my role in the company's success. The media picked up on it, and suddenly, my name was everywhere, on industry blogs, in investor circles, and across social media. It wasn't just about fixing the broken systems anymore. It was about me reclaiming my place in the narrative. I returned to the office for the first time in months, but this time, things were different. The team greeted me with a mix of relief and wariness. They knew the pressure had been building, but now they could see the direction we were heading. As I walked through the halls, I could feel their eyes on me, no longer dismissing me but acknowledging the weight of what I had brought back with me. I met with the new tech team, the one they had assembled in my absence. I didn't come in with a sense of vengeance or blame. I came in with a plan, a vision for the future. We weren't just going to rebuild the systems. We were going to rebuild the entire culture. We would fix the broken processes, the fractured communication, and the lack of trust that had taken root in my absence. We would make this company strong again, not just from the inside out, but from the top down. Over the next few months, I worked tirelessly. The systems were fixed and the clients who had left began to return. Investors started to breathe a little easier. The cracks that had formed in the foundation were patched, but they were never fully erased. The company would never be the same again, not because of the systems, but because the leadership had learned a valuable lesson. They had learned that the true value of a company doesn't just lie in its profits or its products, it lies in the people who build it. And now I was finally in a position where I didn't have to hide in the shadows anymore. I didn't have to prove myself constantly. I didn't have to wait for someone else to recognize my worth. I was the one in charge. And when I walked into the boardroom for the next big meeting, there was no mistaking who the real leader was. I had gone from being fired to being the one they couldn't function without, and I was going to make sure they never forgot it. The silence in my office felt heavier now, more intense. The messages from David were piling up, but I resisted the urge to reply right away. Patience was key. I had learned long ago that the best way to gain control in any situation was to let the other side sweat it out, to make them wait and feel the weight of their desperation. I knew David was growing anxious, but the last thing I needed was to rush into another conversation where I was at his mercy. This time I was going to dictate the terms. The night stretched on as I scrolled through the files, carefully analyzing every document, every email exchange, every time-stamped record. This was no longer just about fixing their systems. It was about proving that everything they had, the stability, the clients, the investment, had been built on my shoulders. And now it was crumbling. The systems I'd architected were complex, intricate, and designed to function seamlessly under pressure. But without me, without my understanding of the architecture, they would fail. And they already were. I knew they were experiencing outages. I knew the customer complaints were growing. In the back of my mind, I could already hear the tremors of panic echoing through the company, even if they hadn't publicly admitted it yet. I had always been the calm in the storm, but without me, their storm was starting to drown them. 2 days later, I finally replied to David's message. I didn't offer a solution right away. I didn't tell him I would help. I didn't even tell him when I was available. Instead, I simply said, "David, I've received your messages. I understand the gravity of the situation. Let's schedule a time to talk." I made him wait another day. I could almost picture him sitting there, his fingers hovering over his keyboard, unsure whether to push harder or back off. It wasn't just about the help they needed. It was about me regaining control of the narrative. They had underestimated me, and I wasn't going to let that slide. When we finally spoke, I kept my voice even, measured. "David, I understand things have taken a turn for the worse. I've been following the situation closely, but let's be clear. I don't think you fully understand the gravity of what's at stake here." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Tom, we know we made a mistake. We're just asking for your expertise. We need your help to fix this. The systems are down, the clients are unhappy, and our developers are overwhelmed. We can't do it without you." I could hear the desperation in his voice, and it felt good. He wasn't the confident, dismissive CEO he had been just weeks ago. Now he was pleading. It was a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. I let the silence hang in the air for a moment before responding. "David, let's not pretend this is just about fixing a few bugs. You know as well as I do that the core of the problem is deeper than that. You thought you could replace me with someone else, and now the foundation I built is cracking. I warned you. I told you months ago that redundancy and proper documentation were critical, but that wasn't a priority for you, was it?" I could hear him shifting in his chair, probably realizing how much he had underestimated me. "We didn't think it would be this bad," he said, his voice softer now. "But we've hit a wall. We need you back, Tom. The investors are breathing down our necks. We can't afford any more delays. Please, we'll make it right. We'll compensate you fairly." Compensation. The word hung in the air like a fine thread between us. I could feel the power shift even more. They needed me, and they knew it. But I wasn't just looking for a paycheck. No, this time it was about more than that. It was about respect. It was about acknowledgement. "David," I said slowly, savoring the moment, "I'm not sure that just compensating me will be enough this time. I need to see the full picture. I need to know how bad it's really gotten." "I've sent you all the reports, the performance metrics, the client complaints, the internal memos. It's all there," David replied. "I'll review them," I said, my voice flat. "But don't think for a second that this conversation is going to go the way you want. You need to understand that this time, I'm the one with the power." He paused. "What are you asking for, Tom?" "I'm asking for recognition," I said, my tone unwavering. "For all the work I did, for the systems I designed, for the years I spent building this company. I want it acknowledged publicly. What I contributed, what I built. I want you to admit that without me, you're just spinning your wheels." There was another long pause. This time I knew he was weighing his options, trying to figure out how to play this. But there was no playing anymore. The game had changed. They had no choice but to come to me, and I knew they were going to have to swallow their pride. "Fine," David finally said, his voice almost defeated. "We'll do that. We'll make it official, but we need you, Tom. We need you to come back and fix this." I didn't say anything at first. I just let him stew in his desperation for a moment. "I'll think about it," I said before hanging up. The feeling of power that washed over me was unlike anything I had experienced before. I wasn't just the one with the expertise. They needed me to save their company, and they knew it. The next few days passed in a blur. I spent most of my time reviewing the files I had on hand, digging deeper into the issues I knew they were facing. It wasn't hard to see where the problems lay. Their systems were buckling under pressure. But that was just the tip of the iceberg. They had a much bigger problem than just technical issues. There was a leadership vacuum. David had been so focused on the optics, on his vision for the company's future, that he hadn't taken the time to build a solid foundation, and now they were scrambling to keep everything from falling apart. I called Jack again. It's only a matter of time before they call again. They're in way deeper than they want to admit, and their desperation is only going to grow, I said. Jack agreed. "We need to be ready. When they come back, we make sure they know exactly what they're asking for. This time, it's not just a job offer. It's a power play." We both knew this was the moment where I had to make my move. I wasn't going back as a hired hand. I was going back as a partner. And when David called again, he wouldn't just be asking for help. He'd be asking me to save him from himself. Have you ever faced a situation in your life where your boss underestimated you or took you for granted? How did you handle it, and what was the outcome? Share your story.